Welcome back. You're watching Republic TV. You're on the roll and live and rolling coverage of the Prime Minister's visit to America. The Prime Minister has landed in Philadelphia and he's at the hotel in Delaware where he was a few minutes back meeting the Indian diaspora. Like every visit of the Prime Minister, the Indian diaspora giving him a warm welcome in America. It is his first visit to America in his third term, and it is at a very interesting time when in America there is a churn, the fag end of their regime, where elections will be held in November. Trump versus Kamala Harris. The Prime Minister is also meeting Joe Biden in a short while from now. Prime Minister Modi arrived a short while back for a 3-day visit to attend the Quad Summit and also address a key conclave at the United Nations. Those are his two primary objectives of visiting America. The Prime Minister will also hold separate bilateral meetings with US President Joe Biden and other world leaders on the margins of the Quad Summit in Wilmington, Delaware, and the Summit of the Future at the UN General Assembly in New York. And the Prime Minister landed at Philadelphia for his onward journey to Wilmington. And the annual Quad Summit at President Joe Biden's hometown this time around, Wilmington, is expected to roll out a series of new initiatives to boost cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and also explore ways to find peaceful solutions to the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza. The Prime Minister's other engagements also include joining an Indian diaspora event at Long Island and also participating in a roundtable with CEOs of American firms working on cutting-edge technologies such as AI, quantum computing and semiconductors. And the Prime Minister, in his departure statement from New Delhi, said he was looking forward to joining his colleagues, President Joe Biden, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida for the Quad Summit. The Quad has emerged as a key group of like-minded countries to work for peace, progress, prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. The four-member Quad, or the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, advocates upholding a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Beijing sees it as an anti-China grouping. But it's also a very interesting time to be a member of the Quad, given everything that's been happening and the kind of steps that America has taken. Many feel that America has played a role in what happened in Bangladesh. And when it did, and if it did, and it's very clear they had a role to play, how will that figure in the Prime Minister's visit? Because there is no meeting of the Prime Minister Modi with Yunus on the sidelines of the UNGA Special Conclave. All that and more lined up over the next few days. Here's what you can look forward to while we build up to that meeting with Joe Biden in a short while from now. Here's what you can look forward to while the Prime Minister is in America.
A feature of Prime Minister Modi's first visit to the United States in his third term will be the massive diaspora event that he will address in New York City. No stone is being left unturned to make it a grand success. Visuals showed hectic preparations underway at the Nassau Veterans Memorial in Long Island, New York. Jagdish Sehwani, the head of the organizing committee of the big diaspora event, Modi and the United States said they worked 10 years to make it a grand success. He said diaspora is lucky to host the Prime Minister in New York City for the first time in 10 years after his roaring address at the Madison Square Garden in 2014. He added that 15,000 members from the Indian community are likely to flock to the Long Island event.
And first time ever in the history, नासो काउंटी में भारत का कोई प्रधानमंत्री पहली बार आ रहा है. एंड जब मैंने नासो काउंटी के एग्जीक्यूटिव, जहाँ जो भारत में हम मेयर बोलते हैं, उससे बात की तो उनका कहना था कि ही इज़ सो लकी एंड ब्लेस्ड कि करीबन 2 महीने पहले हमने क्रिकेट होस्ट किया था यहाँ. उसके बाद ही सेड कि ऐसा बड़ा इवेंट नासो काउंटी में पहली बार हो रहा है. उन्होंने बोला कि आज तक कभी भी अमेरिका के बाहर का कोई भी लीडर नासो काउंटी में नहीं आया है जिसको इतने लोग उनका स्वागत कर रहे हैं.
Suhak Shukla, another head organizer of the event, said it will only not be a celebration of the diaspora and its love for the homeland, but also of the deepening India-United States partnership across spheres.
Well, Modi and Us is really about India and us. It's a celebration of the Indian American diaspora, our love for our homeland, and also for the US-India partnership. You know, the Indian diaspora is part of India's soft power. We are the cultural ambassadors of an ethos that really exemplifies unity in diversity.
Meanwhile, top foreign policy expert Alok Bansal weighed in on the Prime Minister's Diaspora Connect and what it means for the deepening India-United States ties.
At a time when the presidential election is going on in the US, both the candidates would like to show to their voters that he supports them. Now, this is a very tricky situation because Indian diaspora today is a very, very powerful diaspora and has a role to play. Both former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris would want him to show that he's with them and he supports them. But it shows how important Prime Minister Modi and India has become to even domestic issues in the United States.
Geostrategic expert Pathikrit Pain termed the diaspora as an extension of the Indian diplomacy, wielding significant clout with the power corridors in the United States.
Like an extended arm of India's diplomacy, the Indian diaspora is extremely successful in their professional engagements in the United States. It's one of the richest communities, the Indian diaspora in the United States. So, of course, they do have a certain amount of clout and leverage. I think both the sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, would be trying to woo the diaspora for vote in the ensuing election.
With the presidential elections round the corner, Payne said leaders across the aisle in the United States would look to woo the rich Indian community and tap into its electoral influence in the country. With Prime Minister Modi set to address the diaspora in New York City after 10 years, the big question is, will he counter Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's explosive claims on the Sikh community and China on his recent US visit?
Okay, so while we stay on those live pictures, I have Saurabh Shukla, senior journalist, joining us live. He's based in America these days. He's founder News Mobile. I also have Mr. Rabinder Sachdeva, an expert at foreign affairs, joining us live from America. And I have my colleague Abhishek Kapoor, who joins us live on this rolling broadcast. We go all the way until midnight now. Abhishek, if I can start with you first, or let me actually put this to Saurabh Shukla, and then we'll take it from there one by one. Saurabh, this is not like any other visit. It's very interestingly timed. When there's a churn that we are seeing in America, we don't know which way the elections are going to go. And everything that America has done with India in the last 1 year, and the reason I say that is while Joe Biden has tweeted some time back, calling India a good friend, etc., we know the role that America has played, for example, in Bangladesh with the regime change, right? And we know the Prime Minister is not meeting Yunus on the sidelines in New York. And we know the kind of statements that have come in from the US administration on India, Indian governance, Indian administration in the last 1 year. And they haven't been friendly, to say the least. It's not a normal visit. Saurabh, how are you viewing it from America?
You know, Narendra, let me put it in perspective. I think under Prime Minister Modi and Joe Biden, India and the US have had one of the best relationships ever. I think our relationship with the US has never been as, I would say, better, under the leadership of the two of these leaders. Having said that, there are like friends, you disagree on a lot of issues. There have been differences. There is no doubt about that. If you recall, when Prime Minister visited Washington, D.C., he was accorded a red carpet welcome, which, one of the few foreign leaders who were America's closest allies did. Today, if you ask me to put in perspective this visit is about strengthening India's partnership with the US, whoever comes and wins the election in November. That's the reason why there is a bipartisan support today for India's partnership with the US. There are some elements which obviously who continue to distrust this relationship. There are some elements who continue to destabilize the relationship. But the larger picture that we are today one of the greatest allies for the greater good of the world stays. And that's the etching message that you'll see out of the Quad Summit. Why is Prime Minister going there? And I'll tell you how this entire thing was stitched. Prime Minister is having one of his shortest trip to the US because obviously there are domestic elections underway. He wants to get back to India quickly. But he wanted to accord that honor because this summit is also a farewell summit for Joe Biden's legacy. I remember meeting Joe Biden when he was the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee long ago. He was one of the few persons who recognized the importance of India back then. And he has been pushing steadfastly for this partnership. This visit by the Prime Minister is also to accord that honor to the legacy of Joe Biden, who has created this partnership of Indo-US ties and has worked tirelessly. And I can tell you, yes, there are differences. Like friends, we'll agree to disagree on a lot of things. Bangladesh, India had a different perception. US had a different perception. And certainly, as friends, we will find a solution. But US also recognizes India's preeminent power in Asia. That is the reason why you see the Quad today will agree to intensify this collaboration because, they have a common challenge from China, which is trying to bully not only the Indo-Pacific neighbors, but also try to re-etch the rules-based international order, which India and the US stand for. So this is about strengthening democracy and also agreeing to disagreeing on issues where we don't see eye to eye. There are issues where India speaks about, its concerns to the US, and they will not do it publicly, but yes, privately. Today, it's more about Quad. So those issues will not come up. But I can tell you that the meetings that the Foreign Minister Jaishankar has been having, a lot of other officials have been having on the background, it's about strengthening this partnership and making sure that these differences don't overcome this partnership. But this visit, I can tell you, also signifies, as I said again, Prime Minister Modi going to Joe Biden's hometown and his home, also the hometown, as they say, for this farewell summit to celebrate the legacy and his contribution to the Indo-US partnership. Niranjan.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Saurabh. I'd like to go across to Abhishek now. I think Abhishek has a question for Rubinder. Abhishek?
Well, yes, Niranjan. So I would say let's focus on the pictures and the itinerary. And, Saurabh mentioned how this is going to be the shortest visit. Prime Minister's ninth, by the way. And he has been going to the United States effectively every year. The most important aspect of this is obviously that this is going to be a farewell meeting. In a while from now, we are going to have that bilateral between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi. And I can quote the present ambassador of the United States to India, Eric Garcetti, because he never tires of saying that when he got that call from President Biden to become ambassador to India, President Biden had told him from DC to Los Angeles that I'm entrusting you with the most important relationship of the United States in this century that's panning out. So I think that everyone understands the importance of India-US relationship, the partnership. There are ups and downs, there are hiccups. Just imagine that just 3 days before Prime Minister arrived in US, along with the External Affairs Minister and NSA Doval, there was a summons coming in from a district court in New York to Doval and to former Chief Samant Goyal, among others, in the Gurpatwant Singh Pannu petition. Remember the connected case of attempt of assassination of Pannu by some operatives, etc. I mean, we know the case, but let's stay put as of now on the bilateral first and then the Quad Summit. Remember, this is happening at a time when there are two troubled hotspots in the world, and both can really flare up in their own ways. There has been a fair amount of nuclear saber rattling over the last couple of months insofar as the Europe war is concerned. We have seen escalation building up almost every week in the last 2 months since the taking down of Ismail Haniyeh right inside Tehran in Iran by Israel, and the whole Operation Beeper and the pager episode and what has happened over the last 3 days, Niranjan. So these are very difficult times for the world community to negotiate. And the messaging that would be coming out of Quad would be very important, because remember, this is also the high-flying diplomatic season. Saurabh Shukla would vouch for it in New York with the UNGA happening. And, everyone, all the top diplomats, their wives coming in and all the shopping in New York apart. This is high-flying diplomacy time in the United States.
You've been here, Abhishek. Every year this boosts the economy and the iPhone sales, I can tell you that.
Yeah, the Americans were smart post World War II. They thought there would be permanent economic boost happening every year. But the optics of Quad just ahead of UNGA, the optics of Quad just ahead of UNGA is very significant, because everyone would be looking at messaging coming in from these world leaders. Remember, this is also in the backdrop of Prime Minister's recent visit to Ukraine and the Prime Minister's visit to Moscow. In fact, remember, in this Quad Leaders Summit, Narendra Modi is the only leader as a statesman of that level who has spoken to both Putin and Zelensky. So I think on that front also, he's someone who would have the maximum talking to do and most insights to share. And that's the most significant aspect of Quad coming in as it happens today. Maybe Robin can come in there. Robin, you agree that this is going to be the most significant aspect of Quad, where the leaders discuss these troubled hotspots and, of course, the elephant in the room, China.
Oh, absolutely, sir. And as you kind of delineated, let's say the bilateral, to which I'll say what Saurabh was saying, the big picture is that both of us are learning to adjust with each other. We'll have to adjust with each other. That's the bilateral, right? The regional, the Quad definitely is, and, checking or measuring China's expansionism on that. Now, the global, which would also be discussed in the Quad, particularly the Ukraine issue. To my mind, Indian foreign policy has made a gear change in Prime Minister's third term. And what I think, and what I'm calling it as, Modi's single point peace plan for Russia-Ukraine conflict, right? Modi ji, during his meeting with Zelensky, he said that we have concrete steps which we will talk with you in closed doors. So India has made a gear shift in its foreign policy and how it looks to engage. So far we were, polite dialogue, diplomacy, etc. But now we are playing a proactive role. And sure, we are exploring, and India is a force for good, for peace in this conflict. So the Prime Minister, I'm sure, is going to be talking a lot about this, as you said. And, he's the only one who's met Putin and Zelensky, uprising the Quad leaders of his discussions. And he would be just pushing a single point agenda: peace and cessation of conflict in the Ukraine region. Okay, Zelensky has a 10-point plan. Remember, Xi Jinping has proposed a 12 or 13-point program per their calculus or whatever. The point is, this conflict needs a single point program, which is cessation of conflict. And that is what I think Indian foreign policy, Indian diplomacy is working 24/7 the past couple of months, and this momentum will increase. So I think this would be topmost in the agenda of the Prime Minister in his discussions with Biden, other than, yes, adjusting on the bilateral issues. There are quite a few friction points, etc. So that's a continuing story that will go on. And other than the discussions of Quad as to, maritime security being, or maritime domain awareness, some agreements, and, cyberspace, security, green tech, supply chains, etc. The Quad, the mechanics of their end. But to my point, the number one agenda of this visit of the Prime Minister would be, this is my speculation, I may be totally wrong, is that Prime Minister would discuss and explore the single point peace plan.
Okay. Saurabh Shukla, stay with me. I also have Mr. Alok Bansal joining us on the broadcast. I'd like to bring him into this conversation as well. What are you looking forward to, Alok ji, from this meeting? Looking most forward to?
See, there is no doubt, as the previous speaker was telling, I think India, after decades, has made a drastic change in foreign policy initiative. I think we want to be seen on the global arena. And the biggest objective would be to usher in peace in global conflicts. And Prime Minister Modi, having met Russian and Ukrainian president, is moving forward. And I'm quite optimistic that if any country is in a position to bring about peace between this these two warring nations, it's India. And I think we are moving forward. He would also like to brief the US, because we also understand it very well that without bringing at least some sort of acceptance from the US, this peace process would not be able to move forward. So he has already made Russians, he had met Ukrainians, and of course he's coming. So this, to my mind, is going to be the biggest agenda. Of course, there are numerous other agendas. Quad summit is important because this is going to be the last Quad summit where Biden and Kishida will be participating. President Biden has been focusing on moonshot vaccine, which to my mind is a very, very laudable objective, where these four countries pool in their resources to fight this menace of cancer and eradicate from the surface of the earth. I think we would also be insisting on greater investment from US companies, especially in the field of green technology, battery technologies, and of course biotech, etc., where we have actually taken a lead. We have vaccine manufacturing, because President Biden also is talking in terms of vaccines. He wants to remove cancer as we know it. That's the statement he has come, I think. And one of the countries which can contribute the most is India. So I think there is a lot on the agenda. But of course, as I said, the icing on the cake would be if we can move forward on Ukraine-Russia conflict. And I think that should be the number one agenda. Of course, subsequently, India could take initiative if we succeed to probably go and resolve the Gaza conflict, bring some sort of a resolution. The first step, of course, would be ceasefire. If we can actually get a ceasefire to hold for some time, that itself will be a great achievement. And of course, I think for all these things to happen, we'll have to take US on board.
Yeah. Do you expect Bangladesh to come up in the bilateral meeting with Bangladesh? With Biden? Saurabh, just a question. Do you expect that to feature?
100%.
Footnote, as Alokji was also saying, I would agree that today, India, Prime Minister Modi is looking at a bigger picture. Bangladesh is an important neighbor, but let me tell you, Niranjan, in the larger scheme of things, India is now not only a leader of the global south, it is a preeminent global power. And as global power, you look at really the big picture. And the big picture today is that Prime Minister Modi is being seen as a peacemaker. I've been speaking to a lot of diplomats here in the US, US diplomats, some of them who were cynical on India's role in the global arena. But now they say that he's the only leader who had a meeting with Putin and Zelensky, one of the only global leaders who has done it of this stature. That puts us on a very high pedestal. So our goal of our foreign policy is very different. Our foreign policy is how we can make sure that we can create a better and a safer world and also elevate India's global power status. And that's the reason why sometimes you have to make sure that some of these ticklish issues are not discussed at length at these meetings, because these meetings are about re-ensuring that India plays an important role. I can tell you, behind the scenes, there have been more requests for bilateral with Prime Minister Modi that the Indian side can accommodate. They had to say no to a lot of things, a lot of people, because as I mentioned, it's a visit not that long. He's not spending 5-6 days here. He's spending a shorter time because of domestic commitments. So there is the focus will be on India playing the role of a peacemaker. India's leading the way today on the international global discourse, and also making sure that as a democracy representing more than 1.4 billion people, we show the way, whether it's AI, whether it's green technology, whether it's making sure it's a stable and secure Indo-Pacific, or finding a way to end these wars, whether in Ukraine or in Gaza. That will be the message that the Prime Minister will also be delivering in his UN speech. And that is the message that India wants to deliver, that it's a champion for the global south, but is also a close ally of the West in settling these problems, because India realizes that it needs to engage with them for a meaningful solution to these global challenges. That's a big message, Niranjan, if you ask me, from the Prime Minister's visit to the US is going to be.
Yeah. Abhishek, we had those pictures. Okay, these are more pictures coming in. Live from Philadelphia, where the Prime Minister is. It's a pit stop. The Prime Minister will, from here, move to Joe Biden's hometown of Wilmington, where the Quad is expected to roll out a series of new initiatives to boost cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and also perhaps explore ways to find peaceful solutions to the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, as our experts also have been discussing. Abhishek, if you want to speak over these pictures. Shortest visit to the US. I mean, you've been on one of his visits to the US. I have covered the Howdy Modi visit. This one, comparatively very short. Is there lesser excitement you sense, Abhishek, or is that the same? Or is the Josh the same?
Just because you asked this question, Niranjan, I need to give this a bit of information that the capacity of the stadium in Long Island, where Prime Minister is going to address the Diaspora event tomorrow, is 16,000. And already about 30,000 tickets had been sold, and which means that half of those people would actually be sitting outside the stadium watching from this on a screen and not be able to go inside. And that really gives you an idea of the kind of excitement that's there on the side of the people, right? Also, the fact that while in New York, and Saurabh Shukla knows about it, Prime Minister would be meeting about 20 or possibly more of these top business CEOs, honchos, essentially focusing on artificial intelligence, quantum computing, the cutting edge of future technology. And that also gives you an idea of the kind of excitement that's there about meeting the Prime Minister, about his presence in New York for the short trip that he's there. And also remember, Niranjan, that the UN summit that's taking place, apart from the Quad being a farewell summit of President Biden, the UN Future Summit that's happening Monday is also a farewell summit for Antonio Guterres. And he's someone who's very, he's himself has a very nice chemistry with Prime Minister Modi. He has traveled to Gujarat and seen the stuff that has happened on climate change. He politely refused the Pakistanis when they offered him to take to Pak-occupied Jammu and Kashmir territory when he was visiting Islamabad a couple of years back. So even in Prime Minister's participation in the Future Summit is also important, because, you know, the reason why this, apart from the UNGA that happens, the Jamboree that happens every year, the reason why Antonio Guterres has organized this Future Summit is because great many countries around the world are not matching the steps in terms of the UN 2030 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And everyone would be watching and listening to Prime Minister Modi, because on most counts, India is ahead of its targets in meeting the targets of the SDGs. By 2030, we would be doing it ahead of time. So I think in the Future Summit, Prime Minister would effectively be a star campaigner for Antonio Guterres. And so I don't think there is less excitement. There is more. And the fact that it's all that is getting packed in just about 90 odd hours that the Prime Minister is going to spend in the United States, that led.
विश्व में धर्म का प्रतिनिधित्व करते हुए आज मोदी जी का हार्दिक स्वागत करने के लिए यहाँ पे पूरी टीम के साथ में पधारे हैं। हमारी पूरी टीम विश्व में धाम जो पूरे विश्व में फैला हुआ है और पूरे वर्ल्ड की पाटीदार की ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, जिसका प्रतिनिधित्व करते हुए हम पूरी टीम के साथ में मोदी का हार्दिक स्वागत करने के लिए यहाँ पे उपस्थित रहे हैं। और मोदी जी ने सबको बहुत ही रिस्पेक्टफुली हाथ मिला के बहुत ही अभिवादन दिया, उसके लिए हम उनके धन्यवाद प्राप्त करते हैं। थैंक यू सो मच।
लव इंडिया, लव मोदी।
Okay, we stay with these live pictures. The Prime Minister is in Delaware. This is the DuPont Hotel where he will be staying on this short visit to Philadelphia. And the Prime Minister, after this, will be meeting Joe Biden, the US President, in a short while from now, following which the Quad Summit is expected to take place in Wilmington, in Delaware.